Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Lifetime's webinar, our question and answer session for hopeful parents. My name is Kim King, and I'm co-hosting with Libby Deniston, and I just want to share some ways that families can get in touch with us. So if you are new to Lifetime and have not filled out your application, feel free to do so this evening or within the next few days. We usually start processing new applications the following business day and have a response within 1 to 5 business days. You can find the free application on the website. If you want to just type in directly to get to the page, type in lifetimeadoption.com/apply, and that should take you right to the start page of the application. lifetimeadoption.com/apply. Also, if you're just starting to get to know us here at Lifetime, join us on Facebook for more conversations with other adoptive parents who are currently adopting or have already adopted, as well as occasionally birth parents who chime in, and of course here the ladies at Lifetime. We're all part of the conversation on Facebook, and that's at facebook.com/open.adoption. facebook.com/open.adoption. If you have questions, feel free to start typing those into our webinar this evening, or if you have questions that are more of a personal nature, based more on your specific circumstances and whatnot, feel free to call 1-800-923-6784 or email adopt@lifetimeadoption.com. Libby and I are happy to answer all questions we can tonight, and that's what this webinar is all about.
Absolutely, and I love, Kim, we actually have a really great question right here at the top that I would love to talk about first. We don't often get asked this directly, but I know a lot of people wonder, and so simply put, this question says, do you have to, let's see, I'm going to ask
do you have to be Black to adopt a Black child?
Right, but you know what's funny is that at first I read it as, do you have to already have a Black child to adopt a Black child? That's how I was translating it. So I think we could kind of even talk about both, about adopting a child of a race different than your own, but then also maybe what birth mothers are looking for when they are carrying Black or mixed race children. So Kim, what's your experience with families who are hoping to adopt a child of any race?
I think you should leave your options open to any race. If you are totally 100% on board with any race or combinations of races, leave it wide open so that that is not a limitation in your adoption. And then from there, let that birth mom choose the family she's comfortable with. Some birth moms want a family that shares racial heritage with their child, and some have other priorities beyond the race that maybe you connect with her on in other areas beyond race, and so the race isn't as much of a priority to her. So I would say leave it open. Don't limit yourself. If you know you would love to adopt a child regardless of race, or if there are certain races that you know are not deal breakers for you, let that birth mom have that opportunity to choose you. Don't like pre-unchoose yourself for her, so to speak.
No, that's great. And actually just a few weeks ago we hosted a webinar on transracial adoption, and we had 3 adoptive moms. They were each Caucasian moms who adopted a child of a different race, and it was really great just to see the conversation. And what Kim and I were so impressed with was that the overall sense with the webinar, everything they talked about could really apply to any adoptive parent, whether you adopt a child who shares race in common with your family, or if you have that in contrast with each other. The overall sense that we got at the end of that webinar was, these are just moms, and they're raising their children day to day. And they had some really great tips about talking about adoption and answering some of those hard questions that come up as children grow and start to notice. I mean, every child, it's a natural form of part of their development to want to categorize things and put like things together and notice the differences of other things. And so any child's going to go through a period of looking at themselves and wondering, do I have blue eyes like mom? Do I have brown eyes like dad? And It was really cool just to hear them talk about how they handle their children's unique questions because of their own adoption stories. But certainly, like you said, Kim, I love that you emphasized if you know, and this is why she said it this way, is because we never want a family to feel pressured to be open to a certain adoption search or certain preferences just because they feel like they have to in order to adopt successfully. But if you know, I'm a Caucasian adoptive parent, and I would love to adopt an African American child, or I would be open to adopting a child of any racial background, then be open to that. And like you said, Kim, let the birth mother decide what's right for her baby, because there are many birth moms who are really looking at adoptive parents as a whole package and not just based on race.
Yeah.
And then the same goes, I would say I have seen more families, it didn't always used to be this way, but we're seeing even more families, maybe couples of Hispanic background or interracial couples, even African American couples who are saying, well, we'd be open to adopting a child of any race. So it's not just an answer that's limited only to Caucasian families hoping to adopt. It really is.
That's very true.
Stand behind it, then be open. And birth moms aren't necessarily going to say, oh, no, you're not the same race, so you're out. Some of them will, and that's okay. You want it to be the right fit for her.
And you
there
know,
are so many who won't.
Sometimes for certain families, for many families in the U.S., especially today, race is a sensitive topic to even talk about. Like, it's very, especially, I mean, what I'm trying to say is we're not judging adoptive parents for the preferences they're choosing. For us, race is a topic we talk about on a daily basis. For us, it's just it's a category that we're honoring your wishes if you want us to pursue adoptions within different race categories. We're honoring that birth mom's wish if she wants to see families of different races, and, you know, we're just honoring the wishes of our clients. We're not making any judgments on families who have made certain choices with their preferences. Certainly we'll be open and let families know, okay, well, that could create a limitation in your adoption search if you're really only seeking one specific race that we might not see very often. You know, we'll have an open, candid conversation about that. But I would hope adoptive parents could feel comfortable knowing we respect where you come from in making the decisions you're making. We're not here to, we're meeting you where you are and giving you that respect that you've already thought about the different aspects that one would think about when deciding what race to adopt or what race to be open to in your adoption, such as, do you have diversity, or do you have a very welcoming community while it's not very diverse? There aren't really racial tensions. You know, does your extended family that you see a lot, you know, is it going to be a big issue for them, or is it going to be perfectly fine? Are you willing to incorporate other cultures into your family traditions, that type of thing? So there are a lot of things to think about. You don't have to have yes to all of those or any of those in order to feel like this is where the Lord is leading you, to be open to any race. But these are just things that a lot of families think about, and we do not assume to know the careful planning that you've put into setting up your preferences. We just like to know what opportunities we can present you to pursue your adoption for you, so we don't miss out on anybody for you. But I know it can be a sensitive thing for families to be asked about, you know.
Absolutely. And, you know, when it comes down to it, this is a permanent adoption. This isn't, it's not a trial basis. So you never want to feel pressured to be open to adopting a child that you may not be prepared to adopt. I remember working, the same thing goes with age. Your talk, Kim, reminded me that age is often up there with those difficult to talk about preferences. You know, a lot of adoptive parents really hope for a newborn, or maybe at least a child under 1 year old. And but sometimes there's sort of this idea that, oh, well, you wouldn't take a 5-year-old? What if this 5-year-old was in need? And nobody should ever feel guilted into adopting a child, because you need to be the best possible fit for that child, and to have a healthy foundation from the start and not feel like, well, we warmed up to each other. But, so I remember working with a family. They were open to adopting a child of any racial background, but they were also open to a child that was newborn all the way up to 6 years old. Well, we called them with a 5-year-old, and they actually said, oh gosh, we were really hoping for a newborn because when we adopted before, she was already a toddler, and we never had the whole hospital newborn experience. And I said, well, then why did you tell us you were open up to 6 years old? And the answer was, because we thought it would make us presented to more chances to adopt. And I said, well, that's true. You were going out a lot, but you were going out to opportunities that you really didn't want to pursue. So it's really important that you're, number one, honest with yourselves first, and then honest with your adoption professionals so that they can find you an opportunity that you are eager and excited to say yes to.
And at the same time, don't just pick the automatic, almost like pre-envisioned easy answers. If there's a way for you to stretch and research a little and broaden beyond your initial comfort zone, because sometimes families start out with certain preferences and then they, in the end up broadening, but maybe their journey could have been a little shorter if they had kind of done a little extra homework, an extra, a little bit of stretching outside their comfort zone. So really analyze what your preferences are and aim to broaden as broad as you can without broadening to things you know you're not going to actually say yes to. But try to stretch outside that comfort zone a little bit. I would really recommend it. I think it's a healthy thing as long as you are 100% on board with adopting that baby when that birth mom chooses you. Oftentimes when families have gone through infertility, as many of our families have, their automatic vision is for a child of their same race, and they haven't really processed the possibility that in adoption a child could be of a different race. So they automatically just check off their same race, and if no one asks them about that, they may not ever realize, wait a second, actually I am open to a few other races, and that birth mom that's meant for them might be within those other races. So it's good to just kind of try and think outside the box a little bit.
It's true, and to really explore all the hypothetical possibilities. And that's about our application. I'm trying to adjust my volume, Kim, just to make sure that people can hear me, because we had a couple say that they couldn't hear me. So I hope that's not too loud.
No, you're good. I mean, you're not too loud for me.
Okay. So I love that we could talk about this, and we're getting a lot of really great questions that sort of chime in along, too. And I would love to just address, while we're on this topic, how birth moms choose adoptive parents.
Yeah.
So well, tell us a little bit, how do birth moms with Lifetime, when they call Lifetime, how do they typically choose adoptive parents?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the conversations start out the same. They want stability. They want someone who is prepared to financially provide for a child. They want someone with similar values. They want to know what will their child be taught, that type of thing. Beyond that, they might have other things that they're looking for that are a little more specific to that specific birth mom. She might be really artsy, so she wants an artistic family. And Libby, you and I know we've had a lot of conversations at Lifetime about birth moms placing an emphasis on the health of the adoptive parents, that they want someone who's going to be able to be active and healthy and teach their child healthy lifestyle practices. That's been a big concern on birth moms' minds. So we help adoptive parents show that in their profile. We have special tips that we give for photos and things to show how active you are, and I think that's a good thing to be anyway, just for your own health, but certainly that's something important to birth moms. Whether or not they have pets could go either way, You're going to be the right fit for that right birth mom who finds that connection with you, and that's usually there are probably 30 things we could list off, a laundry list of criteria some birth moms have asked us over the years, just very diverse things, everything from vegan to wanting a family with a certain type of medical insurance, to wanting a military family or not wanting a military family, or a certain state she wants them to live in.
I had a birth
marriage
mom
length,
specify political affiliation.
Political affiliation, yeah, and it could go in any direction. That's just something that's important to them for their own reasons, just like how you guys as adoptive parents have your own reasons for setting up certain preferences. But in the end, what she's really looking for is that connection with a family, something that resonates, something that makes her feel like this is the perfect family. You can't manufacture it. You're either going to be it or you're not for that specific birth mom. And it just takes presenting you to a variety of birth moms. Usually it takes a variety of times presenting your profile to have that one perfect match happen where that birth mom feels that connection with you. Just like for most adoptive parents, in the end, they just want a healthy baby. They just want to become parents, or they just want to grow their family. Sure, they have certain criteria, but in the end, the overall thing is just want a healthy child, you know.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And we had a question that we've had a lot of great questions here about transracial adoption. One of them asked if there were any drawbacks to transracial adoptions. I'm not really sure how to answer that, because I think it's not necessarily to say drawbacks, but each family is going to have to come to their own decisions about what limitations, what questions, what resources they can provide any child that they adopt, any child they parent. Mm-hmm. And some families have different hurdles than others. For instance, if you have older relatives that aren't very progressive or up-to-date as far as interracial relations or just getting along in their communities, if you know that there's tension within your own family and that's just not something you want to deal with, that would hurt your child or hurt your own life, families have to make their own decisions. Adoptive parents have to make their own decisions. But they're all also, I love all the stories, Kim, from people who adopted a child of a race different than their own that come back and say, for instance, there's one on Facebook that I've been friends with since they adopted 3 Hispanic siblings. And I remember that she said, you know, my dad was not exactly keen on this at first, but just this week I saw her post a photo of all 3 kids out on Grandpa's ranch, and he looked happy as could be with his 3 grandkids, and he came around. You know, sometimes it's about education and a chance to understand the need of the child and what the love in the family can look like, and getting beyond that traditional picture of maybe an expectation or a dream that was once there. Mm-hmm. But other times it's a real concern. So I never want to, you know, minimize that for certain families, because I know that's something that comes into play.
Well, and also if you have one great aunt who lives like 10 states away and you never see her, and she's going to be a little bit of a pain in the neck about it, but you never see her, she's just going to have her own opinions there in her own head 10 states away. Let her have her opinions. You do what you need to do with your adoption, because it's not going to impact the child's life, you know.
That's a good
but it's
point.
like the
and
immediate
the
family,
card.
You know.
Yeah. I'm picturing the Christmas card that probably pops up in her mail, and she will end up thinking, well, they really are a beautiful family. I couldn't have done that to them, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of what I loved about that webinar we talked about, and I put that up, if you go to adoptionteleconference.com and listen to that recent webinar about transracial adoption, there's also some other stories on there from parents who adopted a child of a race different than their own, so check those out too. But they often talk about, we had to search out resources in our community that we didn't know were there until we brought our baby home. Mm-hmm. Or search out other parents like us so that we had community with people who had similar stories. That's okay. Sometimes it's about finding resources, not just what's already available before you adopt.
And I've said this before on a webinar, hopefully not too recently, but saying that you're open to any race doesn't mean you know everything about every race. It just means you're open to learning about the one that is going to be your child. You know, so being open to every race doesn't mean you need to suddenly start speaking 3 different languages and preparing for this adoption. Or, you know, I mean, if you end up matching with someone who's placing an African American baby with you, then I think it'd be good to look into how to care for the hair and everything, and be surprised to know that there are great resources that will teach you step by step, and lots of people willing to give advice on this. People love giving advice and are happy to help you in that way. So don't let the lack of knowledge prevent you from being open, as long as you have an open attitude about learning once you know what you're working with.
Mm-hmm. So Kim, one question that I was emailed that sort of tags onto this topic, if you could just answer this briefly, do you tend to have an equal amount of adoptions of children of all races, or do you see some races of children being adopted more than others? What's your experience?
You know, I don't think that someone's race, from a birth mom's point of view, I don't think that her race causes her to be more or less likely to end up choosing adoption. I think it's more just personal circumstances that could happen to anyone regardless of race. And we see different races more times than others that they fluctuate for no reason. But we have a good resource available on our website. It's the Birth Mom Listings page, and you can go through and actually scroll through various birth moms we are currently working with. Now, it's very important to correctly understand this birth mom listing because it's often misinterpreted. Those are actual real-life birth moms that we are currently assisting. They're not just examples, although they are examples. They're not like fictitious examples at all. Those are women that we are currently assisting, and once they have a match, we take the listing down. Once they decide they're closing their file because they're not going to be pursuing adoption, then we take their listing down. But we do feel like it's important to share about birth moms with adoptive parents so that you can see for yourself who's out there. What races are we seeing right now? What are they looking for? What ages are the birth moms? Different states we hear from? Because everyone has these questions, and we may not have a lot of statistics to share, especially since these things fluctuate from month to month for no apparent reason. And also, especially for race, we don't have a lot of statistics because we have a lot of families open to a few different races here or there, combinations of races or any race. So it's not important to us to keep statistics on that. I think if it came down to it, to where we were having a problem being able to be successful, then maybe having more statistics would come into the picture. But we haven't reached that point, and so far the Birth Mom listing has been a great resource for adoptive parents, especially if they're more so seeking something we don't see very often. Then they can go there and see for themselves that what they're looking for is more of the exception than the norm, you know.
It's true. And also remember, not all of the birth mothers we're working with are up there.
That's very true.
In particular, lately, we've had several call very late in their pregnancy or at their baby's birth, and they haven't even made it online because they just call, they get an adoption started immediately, and never even make it to the web team. So,
and some birth mom coordinators might be talking with birth moms that they're a little more sensitive for, and they don't want to post her on there. They just choose not to post her on there. And some birth moms have even said, you know, I prefer not to be posted, because they're aware of that listing too.
Right. It's true. So let's see if there's anything else here that we could tie into this before we move on to another topic. Let's go back. We had a couple questions, so I wanted to make sure we answered this. I love seeing questions in common with each other in the audience. When you talked about the application earlier, can you give kind of a timeline idea of what it's like for a family who applies, how long until they know more about whether they are approved to learn more about Lifetime, and then what's a typical timeline look like for someone who's getting started with Lifetime?
Okay, so when you submit your application, we start processing it the following business day. So if you filled it out right now, it's not going to be processed immediately. It'll be starting the following business day. You're welcome to call and check in and see if we got an email notification and just verify we got it. What we do when we start processing your application that following business day is we send you an actual email from us specifically only to you, just letting you know we've got it and we're starting the processing. So it's not an automated thing. It's like like someone is actually staring at your application and now sending you an email saying we've received it. And then from there it goes to the review committee. Usually within a day to 5 business days, we'll have a response from them letting us know. And this is all if you've filled in everything we've asked, and if you've also provided the application photo and everything, like if your application was complete, you can expect a response from the review committee within 1 to 5 business days as to whether or not we can explore further. Oftentimes the next step, if they do wish for us to explore further, the next step is to have a phone conference. And this is an important time, and it's important for married couples to both be present as a couple during their phone conference, because this is when we're going to start to ask you more about your adoption journey, and specifically a lot of times we discuss your preferences for your adoption, and we need to confirm that with both spouses. Sometimes one spouse might be surprised at the response from the other spouse, and it's very eye-opening whether their spouse is more broad than they thought, so they'd sort of toned down their original preferences, but then come to find out their spouse is open to everything. So, wow, okay, well that was a happy surprise, and sometimes it goes the other way. So it's very healthy to have both spouses. It's actually required. And then oftentimes we're sharing more information about what to expect after this phone conference, and we want you both to have access to that info and be able to ask questions. Once we've completed the phone conference, usually we have enough information for the review committee to let us know if we can offer to assist in their adoption. So from there, if we are able to offer to assist, then we will send the packet in the mail so that the family has the paperwork to review and everything. And once the family has decided to move forward into the program, then they're going to probably, if they're new to adoption, they'll probably start their home study, start working on their profile. Getting everything sort of paper ready probably takes about 2 months. However, you can do a temporary profile if you're ready to get started right away. Even if you don't have a full profile, even if you don't have a home study, you can do a temporary profile. Just ask your coordinator if no one has mentioned it to you before. You can do a temporary profile that we can start presenting to birth moms that aren't due right away, so that they're not due for 2 or 3 more months, and by then your home study is going to be done. So we can start working toward a match, and if you're not matched by the time your profiles are done, then we start presenting your real profile instead of the temporary profile. The temporary profile gives you 25 printouts, so you do want to make sure you're staying on task with developing your real profile with your profile coordinator. The profile development is very important. We also encourage families to add video and audio to their web page. I think that should be a natural part of what families do after they complete their profile. Give a birth mom another way to be able to connect with you. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It's like a little 3-minute video that we can add to your web page, and we've seen that be very powerful and compelling for birth moms, feeling confident because she watched their video. And now she can already envision her child with them more than just reading about them.
I would like to just intervene right there. I had one of Lifetime's adoptive moms tell me very recently, and it really spoke to me because we do this every day, and we're sort of moving along so quickly that we don't always get to put into words why we know things work. But she actually said that one of the reasons Lifetime stood out to her was because they, as the adoptive parents, got to make their own profile and their own video, and they didn't look cookie-cuttered like everybody else's video and profile. And she said some adoption professionals will do it for you, but then all the adoptive families sort of look the same because they have the same exact formula, the same exact timing, the same exact titles and wording and everything. And so she said they actually loved doing the video because it was an opportunity for them to make something unique that could reflect their personality, whether that was, we're a little awkward and shy, or we're really funny and outgoing, or fun or laid back, whatever that was. And I think that's one of the greatest things that I love about learning about Lifetime's families, is that we really get to see their uniqueness shine through, which is what's going to stand out to birth moms.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and some birth moms, not all, but some are just only when they're looking through the website on their own. Maybe they haven't contacted us yet, but they know that they can view profiles of families on the website. When they're scrolling through those families, they're scrolling through your one small photo and a little bit of text. And we call it your thumbnail, right? So they're scrolling through these. They can see several families on one page. And, some birth moms are only clicking on the ones that have a video icon showing this family has put a video on their webpage. And so for some birth moms, those are the only profiles they're looking at on their own before they contact us. She might pick out a family before she even reaches out to us for the first time. So really just take those steps. After you've done everything else that you need to do, then the next thing is to do your video. And it really should only be a few minutes long. It's an opportunity for you to talk to a birth mom more than just in the written word. So it's a great opportunity to share your heart, and we have tips and guidelines for you to follow so that you're not just out there on your own. You can talk with us about what to do in your video, and also on the membership site we have information on this. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. The most important thing is to have something up there. We'd rather have something up there that is what the best you can do rather than have nothing up there.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. And I know that, Kim, when it comes to adoption profiles, I would say after all the years that we've been working with adoptive parents, the profile, certainly nowadays the video, sometimes it's very nerve-wracking for families, especially if they're perfectionists or especially if they're a little nervous or feeling a little insecure about putting themselves out there to be chosen by a birth mom. But truly, it can become a very fun phase that helps you discover even more about yourself, but also to help rally even more support and encouragement from those around you. And I would just say, just move it step by step. It may not be our natural inclination to just write about our lives in such a way that sounds very confident and clear. Nobody walks around introducing themselves to a stranger with, a 3-page report, essentially. And that's
right.
But this is how birth moms are getting to know you. She doesn't get to walk up to you and have a face-to-face conversation. But the video can add a little bit of that element of meeting face-to-face. And to not be overwhelmed by it, to really enjoy the process, because someday that profile is going to treasure in your child's story, and you're going to get that profile out when that child starts learning more about, okay, so at one point I wasn't in your lives, and then you're telling me this is how I came into our family. So how did that connect? And you can get out this beautiful profile you made, and your child will look at this and say, oh my gosh, look how dorky your bangs used to be, or wow, Dad, I didn't know you used to play basketball, with the church youth group or whatever. And they could say, well, son, things change when you bring a baby home. I mean, it's all part of their story. It's your family's story. But it really helps, I think, when it comes especially to an open adoption. It helps a child sort of link that bridge between my tummy mommy, my birth mom, and my mom and dad. They were strangers, but this book brought them together.
Yeah. And I just want to point out, we do not leave you out there on your own for developing your profile either.
Right.
So you'll have your profile coordinator guiding you through it, and I recommend all families take all advice from their profile coordinator. Incorporate every suggestion she gives, because she's doing it all for your success and based on what we know to be true of how birth moms respond to profiles. So really just make it a point to incorporate her advice into your profile, even though you might not 100% think, oh, well, that's, not the best flattering photo, but she likes it better than the other one for some reason, Maybe it's because you look happier in that one. You look more at ease, and that's what will attract a birth mom. So just take her advice, and you'll also get sample profiles. You'll get your welcome binder with instructions, and you'll have your online membership site with all the information about profile development. Libby has even done webinars on profile development where she has had people boldly volunteer their profiles to be reviewed live during a webinar, reviewed and critiqued, and then work toward an update. So you have lots of resources there. But it's not all just about getting started. Oftentimes after people are paper ready, there's a period of time of quiet, where you should really be focusing on attending the webinars we provide to our families, just making sure everything is ready, making sure you're prayed up for it, making sure you're financially prepared, and taking advantage of the time to do things that you won't be able to do once the baby comes home. But it does get a little quiet as far as interaction, because we're now presenting you to birth moms. You're not involved in that part of it. We're actively presenting you to multiple birth moms at any given time and working one-on-one with each birth mom. And then when we have that birth mom who has met her requirements and is ready to match, then that's when the activity starts to ramp up a little bit more. It might feel a little quiet, but that's a natural part of it because you've done everything that you should be doing. You're already prepared, so you're just waiting for that match to come along. And average match time is about 6 to 18 months, but it's really hard to give. It's impossible to give people an exact time frame on how soon they'll adopt.
Yes.
Yes.
I always say if I could tell people how long it would be until they brought a baby home, I'd be the most popular staff at Lifetime.
And you know what else? That's so true. But you know what else, Libby, you've said before, is that if you were to know, would it change anything about what you're doing right now?
Right. I think about that a lot with just anything in life. I mean, we get so anxious about, when will I get my car back from the shop, to, how long until escrow closes, and then certainly bigger goals, putting aside adoption. But think about weight loss or something. Even if you take some of the, quote unquote faster routes, there's still time involved. And it's more like, what can you do today that would move you closer to your goal, so that 6 weeks, 6 months from now, 6 years from now, you can reflect back and say, I made the most of that time. I've never seen a family wait 6 years to adopt, so that's more like once you have your baby home, you're looking back and thinking, wow, can you believe how fast that 6 years went, and now we have a 4-year-old, or now we have a 5-year-old, and hindsight is probably my favorite aspect of the adoption stories that we get to share, because it really is amazing to look back. That's kind of, I would say, I know it's a little hokey to reference this, and lately I've been a little bit off of Facebook just because sometimes it gets a little monotonous, but I will say I'm kind of enjoying this new memories feature they have on Facebook, because it is pretty eye-opening. It's sometimes encouraging. Other times it's motivating. When you get that little notification on your Facebook about, you have memories today, and you look back at a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 4 years from now, whenever it was, and think, wow, I'm going through that again, or oh my gosh, I never thought I'd get through that season, or wow, yeah, I forgot we did those amazing things, and to just look at how much your life has changed in a really short period of time. So it's good to keep perspective with adoption, and to ask yourself, if someone were to tell me that here we are on October 22nd, 2015, and 1 year from now I would find out that there was a woman who was due in 2017, would I say that's too long to wait? Or would I take steps now and be ready for her? So, everyone has to answer that for themselves. But we know that the waiting can be challenging, which is why we do offer a lot of webinars, not just for general questions, but also to encourage families along the way. Kim, we've had some really great questions just about open adoption and what adoptions look like with our birth moms, but I wanted maybe for you briefly to just answer a quick question about what a home study is
Mhm.
and how to know if your current home study qualifies you for a home study that Lifetime would need.
So what you would need, okay, a home study is basically you working with a social worker that you hire from your area, your state, through probably a local agency. So you would just call a local agency. It could be like a Lutheran social services, or it could be a Catholic charities, or it could be, you know, anybody that you feel comfortable hiring for your home study that has a social worker that will do a home study for you in your area and that is willing to send that home study to Lifetime once it's done, and that home study can be used in a private interstate adoption as opposed to like international adoption or adoptions through the county like foster adoption. So private interstate adoption. Sometimes we say the word private, sometimes we say the word independent. Private adoption, independent adoption, same thing. So if you ask the social worker, can I use this home study in a private interstate adoption or an independent interstate adoption, and they say yes, then that should be perfectly fine. You would have them send that over to us. Now we do need all the background checks, local, state, federal, and child abuse clearances, and those always have to be less than 1 year old. So if they're already over a year old, for it to be considered up to date, it has to be updated for us. They always have to be less than 1 year old while you're in the program with us. But we can, you know, when you have your welcome call, your primary coordinator, when you start your program, will schedule a welcome call with you. And she can share more details about the home study. And your home study provider is welcome to even contact us and ask us if they, you know, if they have questions. We're happy to speak with them. A home study is when a social worker will work closely with you to write a report about your life, the stability that you have to offer a child. They will take a look around the dwelling, the actual home itself, whether apartment or any type of house that you live in. They will be, you know, taking a look around for safety. Every state has different requirements. Most require couples to be married at least a year. Most require you to be at least 21 years of age. You know, a lot of times they'll have income requirements that just ensure the child won't be living in poverty. The background checks are a big part of it too. Waiting on those to return is usually a cause for a home study to take about 6 to 8 weeks to complete. They want to make sure there's nothing that would possibly endanger the stability of that child or physically endanger that child. That if there is anything that is unhealthy in one's history, that it's been many years since then and you have a healthy pattern now and it's not something that's prohibited in your state for adoptive families to be considered approved to adopt. So it's more of a people study. They're getting to know you. You have lots of paperwork to fill out. You gather all your documents showing who you are, such as your birth certificate, marriage certificate, lots of paperwork, and home visits with the social worker, where they interview you together and separately, as well as meet anyone in your household. And by anyone, I mean whether human or animal, and also the background checks. And so that all is put together into a home study report, which is then sent over to Lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for addressing that. And I
Mm-hmm.
know we actually did a webinar about home studies, so if anyone wants additional clarity about what to expect, we even talked about what to expect after you bring baby home with respect to your home study. So you can look for those webinars on adoptionteleconference.com too. But sometimes the question may relate a little bit more specifically to families on a case-by-case basis. So if you're unsure, you can always reach out to us, adopt@lifetimeadoption.com, and sort of run by what you have and see if we have some tips or some information about what might need to happen before that would qualify to translate over to something that you'd need with a private interstate adoption. But really, the best tip I would say is you have to usually start with the person who completed your home study and just find out what's needed. So I'm glad we could touch on that. But let's talk a little bit about these questions regarding open adoption. There were a lot of questions about contact in open adoption, and I would say, generally speaking, most of those usually relate to contact after the adoption once the child is home.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Kim, can you talk a little bit about what open adoption really is, maybe why it's to the benefit of the birth mother and the adoptive parents, and then maybe what a typical lifetime adoption looks like?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a pretty broad topic. You know, open adoption is a very broad topic. There are a lot of myths that we should recognize and be able to talk about so that families can have their worries addressed and realize open adoption usually isn't like the scary, super involved thing that means their child isn't going to be their child that they suspect open adoption to be, if that makes sense. Sometimes people think of open adoption as like sharing their child and how, you know, I just want to be a mom. I don't want other parents involved. But open adoption really is more about having some form of communication. It doesn't give the birth mom any rights to the child. It doesn't give her any parenting influence. Typically what it looks like is that the adoptive parents are sending the birth mom letters and photos twice a year and might be open to seeing her once or twice a year in a public neutral place like for a play date or a lunch date, as long as everything's healthy with her at that time, of course. Open adoption just means that you know who she is, she knows who you are. You both have the ability to share additional information as it arises or ask questions as they arise. And this can be very enriching for the child's future. The more we interview adoptive parents and birth parents about open adoption, because we're a huge advocate for open adoption, and in that we think people should all know about it and be able to choose what's best for them. But the more we're interviewing these families and birth moms who are living open adoption, the more we see examples of how the information is so enriching to the child's life beyond just the medical facts. Anyone can fill out their medical history questionnaire and then that's that. Why should you still stay in contact? We already have the medical information. But if you could know that the birth mom excels in athletics, she has a musical talent, or, you know, knowing more about her family history, how they came to the U.S. You know, having your child have access to their biological story, you know, of their biological family is very enriching, in addition to the story of your family legacy, you know, your family's history that they inherit as well. But also, I think one of the big things that I really like about open adoption is that you're keeping in contact all along, and you know her all along. You'll probably start to get to know exactly who she is before your child is even old enough to be aware of anything. So you've already gone ahead to know that this is someone safe to be in touch with as you've been sending her letters and photos or had the occasional text or phone call. But when people don't have contact, oftentimes the adoptee decides they want to find out more about their story. They want to know who their birth parents are and if they have any biological siblings, or they want to know why this was chosen for them. So they go on a search. And in closed adoption, you have no idea how that's going to end. It could end in nothing and be greatly disappointing and unanswered for that child. Or it could end in something that you would never, it might be really hard when they find the birth mom and she didn't want to be found. She chose closed adoption. She didn't want to be found. She might be in difficult circumstances, battling some things that you just don't want your child exposed to, and you wouldn't have known about that because you didn't know her or what was going on in her life. So this helps you be a little more involved in, you know, your child's journey and learning about their biological history, so that you're in a position to protect your child, or at least to already know there's nothing to protect them from. She's a perfectly fine person that we've been keeping in touch with a couple times a year as the years have gone by.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think
I love that you talked about over time, Kim, because I think that that's probably one of the things I'm seeing more and more with open adoption today, is that it really can be like extended family. And when I say that, I don't just necessarily mean the familiarity, the comfort level. I mean, like, I just got back from visiting my hometown where I got together at a backyard picnic with a bunch of cousins that I don't talk to all the time. But when we got together, it was wonderful. We caught up with each other. There was no awkwardness, like, oh, are we really, are we really still family? Do we really still like each other? It was just because we're not in touch doesn't mean I don't care about you, and it doesn't mean we're out of touch. Like, it doesn't mean we're disconnected in that way. Whereas there's other people in my extended family that I'm in touch with all the time, but that doesn't necessarily mean every day. That might mean every week or once a month or a few times a year. So with open adoption, there's that same element. It's a real relationship. There's going to be times when, it's not uncommon for a birth mother to place a child, and then I either see it go one of two ways. She either wants a little bit more contact than usual right after the baby is placed, or she just sort of drifts away because she needs the separation and she needs a little privacy to heal. And then over that first year or so, it sort of settles into more of a, okay, now we hear from her every couple months, or I haven't heard from her now for 6 months or a year, so it's a real relationship that ebbs and flows with that contact, but it doesn't have to be something that threatens your parenthood. She doesn't want contact because she doubts your ability to make good decisions for her child. She chose you to make decisions for her child. She chose you to parent her baby. She wants you to be mom and dad. That's probably one of the most common things I hear from birth moms on the research side is, I really want to make sure that my child is not confused about who their mom and dad is. I want them to know I chose those people to be mom and dad. And I want to know how they're all doing, but I don't want to confuse the child.
And we've not had any reports of children being confused. In nearly 30 years, it'll be 30 years in January, we've not had people feel challenged because their child doesn't know who their mom and dad are. They're clear on who mom and dad are, and most families are sharing about adoption with their child from the very earliest of stages. Before they even have awareness, they're already talking about it, praying over it, reading storybooks, along with many other storybooks, but some on adoption. It's not something you just focus in on all the time or anything like that, but it's just a natural part of the conversation in everyday life. It's a topic that may arise from time to time, and it's nothing to hide. So most families are sharing about adoption from a very young age, especially if they have interracial adoption. I don't see how you wouldn't. And especially even if your race is the same as your child that you adopted, other people are going to know that you brought home a baby through adoption, and you can't expect them all to keep it a secret. So sometimes part of it
especially if that child's of a different race than yours.
Yeah. So, well, then there you go. But it's going to tell itself. But regardless,
and we
open
have
adoption.
this great question here. I would love to read this feedback. This is actually from a Lifetime family, so I appreciate you sharing this with us. It says, our pastor's adoption was closed, and he occasionally struggles with it and greatly encourages open adoption. And I know we have a staff member here at Lifetime, too, that shares a similar story, and mostly her whole life she just always wondered where her birth mother was because she wanted to thank her for giving her an amazing life and a loving family. And when they finally did reconnect, I think that it was this year they met for the first time, but last year they met on Facebook, there was nothing but just appreciation. It was a relief for her birth mother to know that she didn't hate her, and it was a relief for Tanya to know that she could just let her know how she was doing and show her her 2 sons, and you have grandchildren here that share your history, and that we're all interested in knowing how you're doing. It was all about love and compassion for the story. It wasn't about just surprise, I'm on your doorstep, now tell me why you did this to me. It was really, and honestly, I think one of the other cool things about the adoption stories we get to hear at Lifetime is the adoptive parents usually tell us how fun it is, how much they love keeping in touch with their child's birth mother because they can share milestones with her that other people might think are sort of ho-hum, sort of, okay, well, that's nice and all. But when you tell your child's birth mom, well, we just had an adopted mom share. It was on one of our private webinars, and she said, She said, who other than your child's birth mom would care to know that your child pooped on the toilet for the first time?
Nobody or got a tooth or that. Something. Yeah.
Right. She said that. Nobody else wants to know that, but when I told that to her, she was so excited because she knows what it means. She knows that her child's making healthy development milestones. She's that the parents are there for him. I mean, it's just such a cool thing to see the adoptive parents actually grow to want that, because what happens is she's not a stranger anymore.
Yeah.
She becomes somebody you care about because you love that child with your whole heart. And we had a great question here that said, what about the birth father? And I know this question was targeting a little bit more on what are the birth father's rights, and can a birth mother still complete an adoption if he's not sure about the adoption? And we can talk about that briefly, but I wanted to add, you could find that maybe your child's birth mom doesn't want to be involved with you, but that the child's birth father or birth grandpa or birth aunt wants that contact, and it can be an amazing connection and something that you embrace, not something that you feel you need to keep at arm's length or hope never happens, but it could actually become something that you want.
It's not something, well, I think it's easy to be intimidated by continuing to keep in touch with a birth mom, but usually adoptive parents kind of come into their own when they realize how secure the legalities are in their adoption, that they're the only ones with parental rights, and as they start parenting day to day, they really come into their own and realize, I'm mom and dad 24/7. She'll always be the birth mom, and how much they appreciate her as well. They really just, that sort of like intimidation factor kind of like just starts to peel off or fall to the wayside, you know, and they realize, wow, she chose us. She wants us to be in this role of full-time 24/7. She knows this isn't co-parenting or anything like that. So a lot of the concerns families have about open adoption turn out to be nothing to actually worry about in reality, or they turn out to be far-fetched things that are based on myths or other types of adoption, not like here at Lifetime. What we're talking about is healthy here because of the type of adoptions we're assisting with. We are assisting with voluntary relinquishments, not other types of adoption such as international or foster adoption, where you may have very different scenarios and intentions on the birth family side. You know, and so it changes the dynamic.
And if there is something that you're a little unsure of, actually, I believe Cynthia's webinar is on adoptionteleconference.com, if I recall. But she, her story was amazing. And one of the things I loved about her testimony was that her daughter's birth mom was in jail at the time she gave birth. And that intimidates a lot of people to think about, oh my gosh, what if that was us? I don't know anyone who's incarcerated right now. Why would I legally align myself through a child in an adoption through a person in jail, in prison? But Cynthia actually said she found great peace in it because she knew that the prison system was giving her prenatal care. She was delivering in a hospital. She couldn't go anywhere, so it's not like she ran off, you know, and couldn't sign papers. They knew where to reach her. And then this birth mother, she had such a positive experience because Cynthia didn't judge her. She didn't make her feel worse about her circumstances. She just offered her child the promise of a loving home and a family stability that she wanted, a healthy growing up environment, and that she had such a great experience getting to know this adoptive mom and working through an adoption plan and having an open adoption, that now this mother sort of mentors the other pregnant women in the prison and tells them about open adoption. It's really cool to see. And so when you think about maybe the worst case, like, well, yeah, that's all fine if she's, you know, in college and making healthy decisions, well, the reality is a lot of women who are choosing adoption aren't always in the healthiest place in their life. They're usually in some sort of circumstance they never planned on moving through. Maybe they don't even know how to get out of it. Maybe they already feel bad enough about what got them into it. and they're looking to adoption for really positive reasons, and you have to give these women a chance. That most of them, I will say, at least at Lifetime, the way we screen the women and require steps of them before they talk with adoptive parents, it usually weeds out the ones who just want to manipulate the system or be a little nutty and unstable. You know, the women that place child for adoption, they're looking for permanent, stable, loving homes through parents who can give their child something that maybe they can't at that time, or maybe they never themselves had, so they don't even know how to offer it. You just don't know where she's going to come from. But again, it comes down to one woman. We're not asking you to put yourself in an open adoption with 12 total strangers. It's coming down to one woman that you get to know before that adoption happens. I think that's the difference. Is it's not like an arranged marriage where you just say, okay, show up, and then we'll remove the veil once everything's signed. No, you know her going into this. You get to ask her questions. She gets to ask you questions. And it becomes something organic from the start. It's not just, okay, good luck, make it work.
And even in the cases where it's an adoption that happens quickly, that she called us when she was in labor, usually she'll still have want to have a say in who the parents will be, and usually she'll want to be able to meet them. Not always, but usually she will want to meet them and have that opportunity for some communication there, even if it's a last minute, what we call a drop in the lap, which those happen 2 or 3 times a month. So that could happen for anybody. I mean, how cool is that? That like Friday night, they just were like, happy Friday, it's going to be the weekend. And then by like Sunday night, they're making plane, travel plans. And by Monday, they're holding their baby in their arms.
Right. And remember, too, this touches on one of the questions we had here about knowing medical information. The time you get before that adoption happens is also the time in which Lifetime is pulling medical records for the prenatal appointments and asking the birth mother questions about her family medical history and whatever she knows about the birth father's medical history. So you get that information, you get as much information as we have before you talk with her. Just like she's learning about you before she talks with you, you're learning about her. And you're going to tell Lifetime what you're looking for so that you don't get presented with an opportunity that you're going to be hesitant to say yes to.
Yes. By the time we're calling you to tell you about a specific birth mom, we've already identified that she fits within your preferences. You meet her preferences. She's provided the paperwork and information we need, and she's already interested in you because she read your profile and you're, one of the families she wants to talk to. So now we call you and let you know everything about her. Now it's important to have a healthy expectation and realize that not every birth mom has a lot of prenatal care. A lot of these women are coming from circumstances that are basically one speck away from the straw that broke the camel's back, and that's why they're here choosing adoption. Like, it's just taking everything they have to even get the paperwork in because of how unstable their circumstances may be. And that may be why they are not going to prenatal care, and they might feel really bad about that, or they might have reasons that are stopping them from going. But that doesn't mean the baby's not healthy. And so we share whatever information we have with you. She has to sign a medical release form. She has to fill out her medical questionnaire. So we know we'll have permission to access any medical records that do exist. And at that point, when she's eligible to actually talk with you and decide who she wants to match with, we may not have received the medical records yet, but that's okay. We encourage families to keep moving forward, and as we receive new information and more information, as long as everything still is within your preferences, then you are still moving forward with that adoption. So, and then, of course, when the baby is born, if something happens that's out of the ordinary and no longer in your preferences, you're not expected to move forward with that baby. But typically nothing goes wrong and everything is perfectly as healthy as we had hoped and expected, even if she may not have had an ultrasound on the schedule that most people would have in a typical pregnancy.
Good. These are great questions. I appreciate these, and I know that these all come from legitimate concerns and questions, maybe even stereotypes or things that friends have said, well, wait, did you think about this yet? And so it's good to voice them. And so I hope it's been helpful for everyone just to hear this discussion a little bit more, because I really think you will find even when you're getting to know your child's birth mom, you'll probably still have these questions. What will this look like with her? And you can actually talk with her about that. What do you have in mind as far as open adoption? And she'll probably want to have that conversation with you so that there's clarity in the beginning rather than frustration or confusion later.
And remember, we're here to coach you through everything, so you're not going to be on your own.
Right, right. Yeah.
And the more you attend, definitely, the more you attend webinars or at least listen to the recordings later, kudos to all of you who couldn't make it for this live webinar but are listening to the recording. I think it's a great exercise to put yourself through, to listen to these scenarios and conversations and questions and answers and tips, because you're growing. Your brain is growing and processing how you would respond and what's expected and what to expect. So, attending these webinars is also going to make you stronger for that moment when you are talking with the birth mom and making decisions to move forward.
Great. So I appreciate all of these, and I've been answering a few of them behind the scenes too. And some of you
I've been doing great, Libby.
Some of you may have gotten an answer that said, I'm not the best person to talk to, and you should talk to this person, and I may have given you an email to someone I know that can answer you better. So, and remember too, if you're on the call and you're already working with Lifetime, if anything sparks a question and you want more information, reach out to your coordinator, get her, maybe get a time to talk with her and say, this brought up something I hadn't thought about, or how can I learn more, wherever you're at. Just remember that we're here to help you because research really is key. Learning and understanding, being prepared. These birth moms are counting on you because chances are they probably know less about the process and what to expect than you do, even though we do everything possible to educate them, but they're just not in a position to absorb it like all of you are. And so that birth mom may be looking to you as sort of the expert and sort of hoping that you will take a compassionate lead in helping her to have a positive experience with adoption too, if that makes sense. I think that I think that helps to describe it.
Yeah, just following her lead and helping her feel comfortable shows that you're a little more well-informed about adoption because you know how important it is for a birth mom to feel comfortable and to be asked for her preferences, how she wants things to go. Because remember, the adoption process is just a snippet of the time out of the life you're going to spend with that child. And so it's very important to go outside your comfort zone and ask her what she's feeling and what she'd like and how she envisions things going and honor that. Just for that brief period of time, let her take the lead on that, but you take the lead in asking her, and we'll coach you through it. You're not on your own,
Right, right.
And if you did have a question, like Libby said, get it off your chest, send an email tonight, get that email out with that question so that you're not carrying that question around so that we can answer that for you.
Great. Well, gosh, this went by really fast. So I again want to thank all of you for the questions and the comments that we had. And like Kim said, please reach out. If you don't have a coordinator at Lifetime or you don't know who she is, you can write to adopt@lifetimeadoption.com. Well, sometimes it happens. You end up talking with a few different people and you don't quite remember who your main contact is. That's okay. We can get you where you're supposed to be.
I know.
You can always write to adopt@lifetimeadoption.com or call our office and talk with someone, 1-800-923-6784. And if you're on the call and you're thinking, gosh, I'd really like to learn more about whether or not Lifetime is the best fit for me and you haven't yet applied, take a first step and apply tonight or this weekend. And what I love about it is it doesn't obligate you to anything, but it really is the best first step. And I think what's great about completing the adoption applications is that it will definitely bring up things you need to think about and maybe spark questions that you didn't think to ask yet, discussions you haven't had maybe with a spouse or a relative yet about what you could see in your future. So you can check out our application at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. And we really try and assess every application as a whole. So think of it as a first step in your whole adoption journey, not just necessarily for Lifetime, because If we believe that there is a better fit for you elsewhere, then we will let you know so that you are free to search that option out and complete your adoption goals too. But we'd love to learn more about you and where you're at. And if you have any questions, please let us know, because we can also make future webinar topics off of these. So
That's right.
It's always helpful to know where you're at. So Kim, is there anything you want to add before we wrap up tonight?
No, I think we've covered all our bases, but thank you all for sticking with us, even though we went a little over our hour, little bonus. But, you know, we appreciate you guys being with us and being open and sharing your questions and your feedback as we have our lively discussion here. I think we've had a great little batch of questions dabbling in a bunch of different topics, but there are definitely more in-depth discussions in other webinars about specific topics we've brought up at adoptionteleconference.com. You can just go to adoptionteleconference.com and scroll down and choose from the different audio programs to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Well, keep in touch and let us know how we can help, and we will talk with you again on our upcoming webinars that are just around the corner. So watch your email for those, and we'll talk with you soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.